Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm going to be doing some center blending with stencils, but first I need to work on the images that are going to go over that blending. So I've got two stamp sets here from the Greeting Farm. I have the Snuggle is Real, which has dogs on it, and then Hey Pretty Kitty, which obviously would have cats. So I've had these two stamp sets for a while and I just found them in my stash and thought, why have I never used these? Let's use them today. So that is how I came about for these cards. I'm first going to stamp a small image from each of these stamp sets, one cat, one dog, and I'm using the Blackout ink from Inkon 3. I'm going to be doing some Copic coloring over these images. So this is a Copic friendly ink that works well, and I'm going to stamp these twice just to make sure I have a really good impression. So that's why using a MISTI stamp positioning tool is beneficial, because it gives me the chance to stamp it twice in the same place without any shifting of the images or the paper. So I'm going to do some Copic coloring like I said before. I'm going to start out by coloring the hair on each one of these. This first one I'm going to use some colors to make kind of a platinum blonde shade. I haven't done some Copic coloring on people images in a while, so I'm going to talk you through this really simple coloring. I've taken the darkest shade and I added that in very small areas. You don't want the dark color to overtake the hair, because then it won't look blonde anymore. It will look like a lighter brown. So you use a very small amount of the darkest shade and then bring in those other colors. And as long as you keep the areas where the highlights are, if you keep those really bright and white, it'll look blonde. Bringing in some purple shades here. There isn't much opportunity for additional color on these images, because the only real color you get is from their clothing, and on this first one, her little hair tie. So I'm just bringing in a little bit of color. I'll let the most color for these cards come with the blending I'm planning to do behind these images. So I'm adding some different skin tones. I'm actually going to use the same colors for the skin for both girls, and I also used R20 for a blush. Since I have those colors out right now, I'm going to go ahead and color her arms and legs and face, and just add a little bit of shading around the outer edges of her face where the hair would be casting a shadow. For her hair, I'm going to make it more brunette, and like I did with the other one, I'm starting with the darkest shade. However, for this one, I'm letting the dark color come in more, because I really want this to look like a dark brunette. I don't want it to look too light, whereas on the first girl, I wanted that platinum color to come through. So I'm bringing lots more color in to give her a more brunette shade to her hair. Bring in that second color and then the third color. And I'm just going to continue adding more and more of these feather-like strokes coming from the darkest areas of her hair to give it more dimension. I really love to color hair like this, and it's been a while since I have, so it was hard to kind of get back into that practice. So I'm adding more and more of this dark shade and getting those colors to blend. Not really blend like a smooth blend, but just so that the colors are all there. For her outfit, I decided to use colors of pink. So I started out with kind of like the lightest shade, which is RV23, and then brought in those darker shades. The cat, like most cats that I've colored in the recent years, is going to be gray. And I'm also going to add some darker stripes so that the cat looks like my two American Shorthair cats, Sophie and Daphne. This little girl and the cat most resembles me and my cat, and I was thinking of my friend Heidi, and she doesn't have a dog right now. Hopefully she'll get one soon, but she loves dogs, and I thought this would be a really cute little puppy for her, and I thought I would send this card to her. So that's why I'm coloring this particular image in that color scheme. So I used the coordinating dies that go with these stamp sets on this, and I cut each one of them out. And I wanted to show you how well these dies are packaged, because it gives you an idea of which die goes with each image. I think that's just so smart, and I thought that was really helpful when I was, picking out the dies and making sure it was the right one. I'm going to prep the card bases now. For the card bases, I'm using some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White in the 110-pound weight, and I'm scoring both of these at 5.5 to create top folding cards. I also used that same cardstock for the coloring earlier, so the white edge around those die cut images should match the white card base. I'm putting each card base in my MISTI stamp positioning tool. I'm going to place the image just on the card, and then I'm going to do some stamping. I'm going to bring in this transparency grid sheet so that I can position this greeting stamp just right. So this particular greeting has more kind of like lined up typography. So I knew it would be obvious if this greeting was a little bit skewed. So I thought it would be helpful to use that grid transparency sheet. And then I went ahead and stamped it in that same black ink so that it matches the black on the image. And I stamped this twice like I did before, just to make sure I get a really nice solid greeting. I did the same thing for the other card, except this one has more of a playful font used. It wouldn't be as obvious if things were skewed, so I didn't bother using that transparency grid to help me with that. I just kind of eyeballed it. And once again, I did stamp this twice in that Ink on 3 blackout ink. So I'm going to do some ink blending. This is the ink blending I was talking about at the beginning of the video. I'm going to do some center blending with a stencil. So I'm first going to place that image on my card front so I can see where it's going to be placed. Then I'll lift it up and just put a little tiny pencil dot there. That won't show because my image will go over it eventually. I'm going to use some stencils. This first one is the Radiant stencil from Simon, and I'm going to be doing a background that matches the girl with the purple dress. So I'm using blues and purples, and I'm starting out with Stormy Sky, which actually didn't show up too much once I started putting the other colors on, but this is the color I started with. So I'm using really, really light strokes. I have a very light hand, and I'm also kind of bouncing off before I come onto my project. So I've got that piece of Post-it note up there that I'll kind of pounce off a little bit of that color, and then I'll come in and start blending. I just want to, as much as I can, prevent putting like a stamp right down of like the shape of that foam tool. So now I've moved on to Chipped Sapphire. I wanted to have just a little more of an intense blue coming down to that center area. And this is when you notice that it sort of overtook the Stormy Sky. So I think if I was to do this again, I would just start with Chipped Sapphire. And then I came in with some Seedless Preserves and kind of blend it out going toward the bottom. I want to keep this area fairly small since my image is very small. And I also know that once I add the stencil over top, that area will sort of expand and become a little bit bigger. So I've got the Seedless Preserves pretty much on there as much as I need it. And now I'm going to kind of get an idea of where that girl's going to go. And then I'm going to bring in the stencil. So once again, this is the Radiant stencil from Simon Says Stamp. And for the most part, when I started out here, I did not add additional ink to my ink blending tool. I just went straight on, and it worked pretty well. Eventually, I do grab more ink just because it wasn't quite enough, but I still pounce that foam tool on the paper off to the side before bringing it in to my project. This Radiant stencil, since it kind of has a design that comes out from the center area, it gives me a good way to make sure that my blending doesn't go too far. I don't want it to go beyond like that first ring in the design. So I'm bringing it out just a little bit, and I'm using Chipped Sapphire. I've decided not to even bother with the Stormy Sky. I just did Chipped Sapphire. So now I have that nice pattern coming from behind. And for the other card base, I'm going to do a similar technique here, except I'm using Picked Raspberry and also Seedless Preserves, which eventually turns into Wilted Violet. I put this purple down and I realized that it just wasn't quite as vibrant as I wanted it to be. So then I brought in Wilted Violet, and that really kind of punched up the color and it started to look really nice. So the stencil I'm using for this one is the Square Dance stencil from Simon. And this one doesn't have a circular pattern to the design, so I'm going to try to just eyeball it and make sure that that area doesn't get too big, because once you start blending out, you can get a little bit, get carried away and have that blend go out too far. But I wanted to just keep it more centered in that area so that it wasn't too expansive beyond the size of that die cut image of the little girl. So I'm going to lift this up, and you can see how that design really comes through with the stenciling. I think it looks really, really cool like this. So I'm going to put her on top and just see what she looks like. And before I move on and finish the cards, while I've got the stencils and the inks out, I'm going to go ahead and do the envelopes, because why not, right? You want them to match. So I'm going to use the same exact colors that I used on each card, and I kept it really simple. I stenciled on and then went back over it just to soften the stark white lines of the stenciling. So I'm going to go on to the second envelope, and this time I'm going to have the Chipped Sapphire come from the bottom, and then I'll have the Seedless Preserves come from the top. I'm going to remove that tape up there at the top and just blend a little bit more in from that area because I realized it needed to blend even more, and that's going to extend onto the back flap of the envelope. To finish the cards, I put some foam tape behind each one of these girls and then pressed it down onto the card front. So the cards are pretty much finished now. I'm just going to finish up these envelopes by adding some postage that goes along with the colors on each envelope. So here are 3 stamps for the first one, and it goes well with the purples and blues. And then I've got more pinks and purples on these stamps for the other envelope. And that will finish up all the envelopes and the cards for today's video. I've been doing more of these envelopes while I create the card. I hope you guys have enjoyed that over the last little bit. I'm going to continue to do that. I think it looks really fun, and it encourages me to go ahead and send these cards out because they're already halfway to the mailbox. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching today's video on center blending with stenciling. I'll be back very soon with another video.